Good evening. So, we can all relax now. We can all relax now because this is a space that frees us from the need to be a somebody. That actually honors the part in us that is a no one and nothing special. Unlike our social role, which we play most of the time, the effort of being ourselves or our self-image. Here we can free ourselves from the need to be this someone. There's nothing special about this one that sits on the chair. Although I do apparently sit on the chair, teaching, what we really share is the freedom from being special. Spiritual awakening, enlightenment are not about being someone special. It's actually the first time in your life when you are not special. This is your liberation. Sometimes people come to me very anxious in sharing with me and feeling very self-conscious. And that is always quite funny because this is the first space in which there is absolutely no separation. So feel how you are removing the social role, the one that you are for society, the role that you play in face of people, and allow yourself to be just a naked being. That its beauty is not in being special, not even unique. But first of all, in being no one and nothing. In our society, we give so much importance to being unique, to being individual. But really, uniqueness is just a secondary value. It is beautiful, it has its importance, but it is not the core of our being. The core of our being is consciousness, and this consciousness is not personal, it's not unique. Surely it isn't special. And this is what we do in meditation and in self-inquiry. We basically learn how to be this naked, pure consciousness. Letting go of all that defines us. Because finally all that defines us makes us feel contracted. We become this, we become that. But when we spiritually mature, realize that self-definition is bondage. So this is what we are doing here, also today. Learning how to be what we really are. Because what we really are is so astonishing, so beautiful, that any kind of uniqueness or specialness or individuality really pale into insignificance. Today we will talk about a very powerful point, at least I think it's powerful, but truly a very central point in spirituality, in spiritual practice, in spiritual life, and that is renunciation. Do you know what renunciation is? Do we need a German word for that? Yes?
Entsagung oder Rückzug?
Exactly, this one.
I guess.
Renunciation is the practice, the spiritual practice of dropping possessions. Anything that we have, so that we can feel that we are that we have purified, that we have gotten closer and closer to the truth of who we really are. And often in spiritual life, people tend to think that renunciation is something that is external. That you drop possessions, in India we have what is called the sadhu. This tradition of one who lets go of everything, leaves behind the house, the home, the family, the children, the wife, the bed, the comfort of life, remains with some kind of a thin cloth, and then begins to roam the earth, to walk, to wander around with nothing. You can see here and there sadhus in India. Or you can, of course, have the example, more familiar example of the monk. It's the one who says that I am leaving the world behind. I am leaving all behind, all my needs, all my wants, all my possessions, because I want to get closer to God. I want to reach the spirit. Now, this is what we can call external renunciation. In external renunciation, you get rid of things that you have. You can close your bank account and give your money to the poor and sell your house. Try to remain as poor as possible, so there will be no attachment to not be in relationships, and so on and so on. To make sure that you don't remain attached to anything. But then there is a practice that is much more subtle and much more difficult, which is internal renunciation. And you can sell all your possessions and be a sadhu and still not be able to internally renounce. On the other hand, you can internally renounce and still, at least to a certain degree, remain exactly where you are in the world and be even more without possessions than a sadhu. Now, how would that be possible? That you can be in a relationship, you can be in a house with a work, with children, you can still remain in the world and still internally be a true renunciate. It is because the whole process of renunciation, of letting go, takes place, the real one takes place only inside. And it is because, this is perhaps even more extreme, also the process that makes us think that we have certain things, that we possess certain things, starts only from the inside. And this is quite a dramatic understanding. If you can follow through this understanding, that is very liberating. Because the reality is that we absolutely have nothing right now. We are completely without possessions. This makes it, of course, a bit funny, the whole process of the whole spiritual practice of letting go. How can you let go if you don't have anything? You can think you have certain things, then you let go of what you think you have. Then one day you realize that you never had anything. You just imagined. You just created a certain images in your mind that made you think, I have this, I have that, and then now let's let go of that, and so on. And if you learn this lesson, you don't need to wander around and be in sadhu. That you could save the trouble of wandering around the earth, half naked, or even naked sometimes. I don't know if you have watched once this huge religious festival in India called the Kumbh Mela. There's the gathering of all sadhus, monks, all those who are devoted to God, and many of them, they come completely naked. They walk naked, they are smeared with ashes. They really have nothing. If they could let go of their body, they would do also that. And it's very impressive. It is very bold, very courageous to be like that on earth. But really the process of renunciation, even if we didn't go through that, is completely relevant to all of us. It's not even a spiritual practice. It's a human practice. Because it's a human reality that we all deal with. Starting with the people we love. Right? Children, parents, romantic partners, friends. What the brain does with these lovely people that surround us is that it creates a certain image of possession. You look at someone, the brain gets used to it, to the presence of this someone, and slowly it creates a certain self-image of I have this one. This one is mine. Right? We all say, oh, my love, my sweetheart, my son, my daughter, my father. And it's very interesting, by the way, that the sense of I, the sense of me, is composed of all the things we think we have. You see? That is why if you take everything that you think you have, you realize that maybe to your horror or maybe to your happiness, for me it was very happy, you look inside and suddenly you realize that there is no one there. You realize that the feeling of a somebody, of a me, is almost like the sun that all the planets revolve around, you see, all of our possessions. And in the middle, there is a sense of self, a sense of me and I. But remove all the revolving planets, and then you look into the center of the solar system, so-called solar system, and suddenly you see that the sun, you, existed only thanks to these planets. So that is why the simplest, one of the simplest self-inquiries that one could ever have is, instead of meditation, more powerful than meditation. Meditation is sometimes, such an indirect path that you need to practice every day, but without much insight, more often than not. But a self-inquiry where you sit and ask yourself, okay, so let's remove this relationship. And let's remove this person. And let's remove, I don't know, the diploma I have. And let's remove this knowledge, this experience that I think I have. And so on and so on. All the things that you think you have. And then ask myself, okay, so who am I? Who am I without all these possessions? Then you begin to get very close to the truth of to the reality of your consciousness. This is surely not the end, but at least a good beginning. So let's return to our beloved. He or she are still waiting. We look at them. We look at a child, and we think, this is my child. I am a father. And then we cling to this self-image, to this thought, but then the outside world seems to quite dislike our sense of possession. It keeps rocking the boat. The whole world around us, all of our possessions, that they seem to constantly shake our self-image. Sometimes it is in the possible death of someone who we took in so deeply into our self-image, into our sense of self, that without this someone, we can't even imagine what would remain. Sometimes it is just a romantic relationship, After something like 1 or 2 days, we already have the I have. It's already the attachment is fully formed. We try to resist. We try to say, no, I'm free individual and I'm letting you be, and we have space. Yes, we have space. You can be, I can be, but this is very untrue, because in reality we have already formed the I have. You are mine. That's why I'm quite amused sometimes, when somebody enters a relationship and then they meet me and they say, I don't know what to do. My whole world is shaken because I don't know what would. We entered such a depth and in the relationship, and what would I do if this is going to be taken away? And then I ask, for how long have you been together? And the answer is, 2 weeks. Because what our brain does is that it is desperately wrapping itself around things and people. And then, of course, these things and people, they seem to constantly appear or disappear. And all of our relationships, all of our tensions, they result from this feeling of I have you. Intellectually, we perhaps understand, yes, this person is not mine. We meet in free space as individuals. But the reality of our emotions says otherwise. And this is because what we have creates us. And this is our difficulty. Our difficulty is to let go of ourselves as we knew it. Not of any person, not of any possession. We just don't know who we would be. If we would even exist. And this happens with mothers, for example, mothers and fathers. They ask me, what can I do about my attachment to my child? Am I meant to let go of this attachment? So I'm saying, no, of course you're not meant to let go of the responsibility, the love, the sharing, the flow. Just let go of one thing, of the thought, I am a mother. And then the brain becomes horrified. What do you mean? Because the mother's and the father's brain, they wrap themselves around this identity. It's not the child that they are attached to. It's the image. There is the prophet by Khalil Gibran. Everyone knows this one. Then there is the chapter about children. And there is the clear statement, your children are not your own. Your children belong to life. What a simple truth. But can we really renounce not the children, but this thought? You see, so renunciation is only the renunciation of thoughts. Not really of possessions. Of course, if you renounce thoughts, then with it, you tend to live usually a much simpler life with much less attachments, much less possessions, and so on and so on. This is natural. But this is only the result. The real process begins inside. In a way, this means, and I don't know if you will like what this kind of an invitation, but this means to invite death into our life. You see, because death is everywhere. We push it away. We're always shocked when it comes. We never say, oh, I prepared for this moment for so many years. So now there's nothing for me to let go of. But when you have death in your consciousness, not in a tragic way, just as an awareness, you look at the face of your beloved and you know that behind it there is death. That makes you, of course, cherish the being together, but in a completely different way. It's like enjoying something while knowing that it is not yours. So then your touch is light, you see? You don't cling to things, you are not desperate. You hold and let go at the same time. And it's beautiful, isn't it, that every night we renounce everything, right? We don't do it consciously. Every night, it's because we are counting on the fact that we will wake up the other day. Most statistically, it happens. Mostly, that we wake up and there is life again with all of our possessions intact. But at night, we renounce. If we did it consciously, we could actually bring up in our mind's eye all the things we think we have. and separate, say real goodbye. Okay, goodbye, partner. Goodbye, child. Goodbye, father, mother, earth, body. Goodbye, me. Try that once. Your sleep will be very interesting. Because then sleep is really like entering death. And death is not something terrible. And not because we will all meet in the afterlife and so on, or in heaven. It's not important what will happen, you see. Because anyway, even if you will be in astral worlds, walk around with, I don't know, a certain astral form, even this form will one day need to dissipate. Everything, every form needs to unform itself. There is no eternity to the form. And how much we all know, we know that at the moment of death, we are all, no matter how attached we were and were connected and so on, eventually we must take this journey alone. It's so extraordinary. So to do that beautifully now, while being in life, while having children, raising children, engaging in the act of raising children, while being partners, while having a body, engaging, experiencing the experience of being in the body, while all that, have nothing. Allow this, the essence of death, be inside us. Agree that it's not ours. Accept it deeply with love, not with complaint. And it is, by the way, renunciation is the starting of love. We all know intuitively that if we don't own someone, we can actually love this someone. But still we own them even more. Because we think that there is great beauty in saying my and mine. That it means that this makes us intimate and close. But if you look at someone and you know that they are not yours, and that they radiate in life's light, and you love it, and you are able to love still, then you no longer need to go through all that game of relationships in which you endlessly expect, endlessly get disappointed, endlessly want and need and cry and demand and fear that day of separation, consciously or unconsciously, because you are prepared. You bravely embrace reality. And there is a great beauty, don't get me wrong, in the thread of connection. This thread that connects us to certain people and so on. We're not meant to become completely faceless, completely impersonal. But we also need to accept that the main teaching of any kind of relationship, any kind of attachment is to teach us how to let go and how to love out of letting go. And if we forget that, our beloved ones are there to remind us as their wonderful representatives of life. Your child will one day look at you and say, angrily, "You are not my father," or will suddenly disappear into a life of a grown-up and forget all about you. That is why we renounce consciously. Not because we fear the pain of so we say, "Oh, I don't want to get that shock, then I will do it now." But because we understand the reality that we really have nothing. Including not this body. We just borrowed it, right? we don't even remember that we borrowed it. Somehow it was given to us. So it's only thoughts that we are renouncing. Never realities. You see, this is the nature of fear. Fear is always about losing something, the possibility of losing something that we think we have. Always. Sometimes it's just self-image. Sometimes it's the thought, I have a body. But when you have nothing, or realize you have never had, the fear is gone. So let's see if there are questions. I'm saying politely, I'm sure that there are. Or maybe you are confused by the question, do you have questions? Yes, please.
I was wondering whether there's anything particular to say about attachment to infrastructure, because I was like, while you were talking about the attachment to relationships, I was thinking that the main things that I'm attached to are actually all infrastructure, like my bike. So I'm afraid that my bike gets stolen, and all of these things that I that I'm attached to most are infrastructure. And so I was wondering whether there's anything different about it, because I don't like my bike because it's pretty, but because I can go through the city quickly. So it enables me.
What do you include in infrastructure? I just want to understand.
Things that are enabling practically, like also public transport, of course, access to education, all these things that are enabling.
You don't mean that you are attached to buses and subways?
Not to one
okay.
particular bus, but it's really great to have that. Like there would be lost if we wouldn't have public transportation in Berlin.
Yes.
That's how I see it.
Yes. So the question I'm just repeating for online viewers is what about being attached to a certain way of life, right? A certain comfort or devices, things that make us live well, right?
Well, it's not one water, but it's about things that enable us to do things, like things that help us with activities.
Yes. We of course get very attached to a way of life. This is how our brain works. It has a certain elements that it begins to recognize as its comfort and availability, and it wants to repeat it forever. It really doesn't like whenever anything is shaken in this setting. That's why when we sometimes become old and we are deeply attached, our brain is deeply attached to a certain vision of exactly how things should be, even the slightest thing could make us go mad. I don't know if you've ever seen sometimes old people get enraged and completely shaken by one element moving in their setting. Of course, there is the opposite example of old people who realize that there is no point in all that, and they begin to inwardly laugh, right? They begin to soften up, to look at all this madhouse of possessiveness, and this is how we wisely age. You see, when we wisely age, the older we become, the older we get, the more beautifully we with the closeness of death, we understand. And we move from this state of a clenched fist to an open hand, letting things be as they are, letting them be shaken and laugh inwardly or outwardly. But the later example is more rare. Usually what happens is that our brain begins, and this is, by the way, the more it feels comfortable, the more it has comfort, the more it clings to it. The less flexible it is, because everything becomes exactly as it should be. And then suddenly we lose our bike, or the train doesn't come, or there is a new law that outlaws trains and subways for some strange reason. or anything that we would like to see as our comfort, our safety, our fixed vision of reality. Sometimes, and in enough places in time, this perfect vision is challenged. If you are sensitive, you realize that it's everywhere all the time. This danger is creeping in. This is something that destabilizes, or at least threatens to destabilize, the attachment of the brain to its usual setting, to what we call its routine, that is also a sort of possession. And that is why, again, we become so angry so quickly when even the slightest thing is taken away. And it's from the outside, it always looks very funny. You know, how people make so much fuss about tiny things, only because they don't suit the perfect image that the brain has. And to this perfect image, the brain is attached, not to the outside world. That is why, by the way, at times of war or other situations that are extreme, when the comfort is taken away, at the beginning there is a huge resistance, but then the brain realizes its unbelievable flexibility. It can actually work with almost everything. It can adjust, it can flow, it can find new solutions, it can content itself with very little. Sometimes we experiment with that. We go to faraway places with nothing. And then with no internet, with no that, and suddenly we say, hey, I don't really need all that. And here, if our internet collapses, within 5 minutes there is no less than hysteria, you see? What would I do without internet? Well, what am I going to do without the cell phone? It's like the cell phone is, you see, we don't realize that we can basically flow with everything, and that we are amazingly flexible beings. And this also goes for the bigger things. What would I do if my partner would one day go away? We have such a scary image, and then they go away, and then after some time we say, hey, it's actually quite cool. And then we say, oh, I'm so happy that life pushed this forward. I don't even understand why I felt that it would be so terrible. It's actually great. I feel free, I feel alive, and so on and so on and so on. So all the things we think are good for us are at least things that we don't really need. And sometimes they are even bad for us. So enjoy your bike, but if it's stolen, make sure you laugh. Okay, 5 minutes. Be shocked, shaken, trembling, whatever. Watch how your brain collapses with, wow, what is it? Because the thing is, we don't care about the bike. Please understand, this is the principle of renunciation. You don't care about the bike. It's not a partner that you fear you might lose. It's not really the train that should be on time. It's not that we fear being late to work. It's this thing inside here that just wants it exactly as it should be, because this is the only way it feels safe. And the brain so quickly creates a reality and so quickly holds on to it. Like, this is life, that's it, don't take it away. Don't take it. And it doesn't really realize that mostly we are happier when this happens. We always find a solution. There's always a new path. And sometimes we are forced to be creative. You see? Otherwise, we would not be creative. We would be just robots. So laugh. Remind yourself, oh, life again has reminded me that what I think is mine has never been mine. So good luck for the guy that now took it and thinks that he has a bike. Now let's take a walk. Then you begin to take a walk and you look everywhere and you suddenly feel life. And you see that the only damage that happened is in the mind. Even that is not real, it's just a thought. Or what you say, something terrible happened today. Nothing terrible happened today. We think that something terrible happened today. And this thought is terrible, you see? Did you raise your hand? Or just stretching?
No.
Was the stretching like this?
No.
Okay, yes.
I think it's more a general question about possessions,
Okay.
not only the relationship with it, but actually it's kind of confusing because we live in a culture which is a lot about consuming and about possessions. And I'm asking myself what is the criteria of what is really needed, and in a practical way, in a spiritual way, in a moral.
Again, the question is, we live in a culture of consuming. That's quite obvious.
Yes.
Yes.
And there is a question in the spiritual process or journey, what is needed? What is the right amount of possessions according to what criteria?
Okay, so what is the right amount of possession? What is the right criteria?
How to look at it from a fresh point of view?
In reality, we need very little. Very little. most of the things we think we need are not things we really need. And that is quite astonishing to understand, because there is absolutely no relation between having or consuming anything and being happy, genuinely happy. We sometimes have the image that if we only had a lot of money or had this or that, then we could do this and that, and then what? We'll only have more to renounce inwardly, which is a bit more tiresome. You see? The more possessions, the more we have to renounce inwardly, the more, of course, will be shaken. So, in reality, we need very little. If you enter this kind of mode, you will naturally live a modest life. You see? You will naturally resist wealth also. Albert Einstein, who was, even when he reached a position that he could be very wealthy and so on, he couldn't bear being in a first class on the train. It just didn't make sense to him. So you will surely be unimpressed by wealth. And what degree of modesty, this is already varying. This is something that is according to your own growing nature of simplicity, that it will make you let go of this or that, or realize that you don't need this or that. You see? It is questionable if someone who is a renunciate, true renunciate, could be one who feels comfortable with too much wealth, you see, too much richness, too much things. Usually, the natural path is to feel very uncomfortable with all this, and to grow a certain disinterest or just carelessness about this. But again, what is important, renounce inwardly, that will naturally make you realize how little you need. And again, the more we renounce, and the purer our consciousness grows, and the more unlimited our consciousness grows, the closer we get to the point in which we are able to realize that this consciousness includes everything in it. You see? This consciousness includes in it all the diamonds of the world, all the yachts and these funny papers that they call money. All of this is included, which makes you as consciousness the richest in the universe. You see? You already have it. It's yours. You see? So the process is from thinking that you have certain things to letting go of all things and being no one, and eventually to realizing that you are that consciousness which has everything. Then you feel the richest. You feel such abundance that why would you have anything if you have everything, you see? Just to have one thing? And then you don't have any more desires, sexual, romantic, desire for power, because all these things, any object that you look at is you and it is yours, you see. So this is the irony, because we sometimes think that spirituality leads eventually to being completely empty, but it's actually not making you more monk-like. The final outcome is that you are richer than an emperor. I saw some hand over there. Yes, that. This one.
You said of letting go of self-image, right?
Yes.
But how to let go of the self-image in the context of people, when you're in contact with people, to really be in contact with people?
Again, please, how do I let go?
Of the self-image while being in contact with the people.
While being with the contact, in contact with the people who look at you through this self-image, or that you need to...
No, like your surrounding, your friends, your people that you know.
Yes, that's a big question. Because the people around us, they hold for us the self-image, and we hold for them their self-image. And we have a certain social role, of course, which includes all the social gestures and all the best way is to understand our social image, or self-image as is perceived by others as a sort of service to the others. For example, when I meet my mother, I become for her, her son. I do everything that is required of a son, and because in her world I am her son, you see, and I respect that. Inside, I'm nothing. I don't become a son because this is what I play outwardly as a part of a connection that enables, of course, love in this world. So I resist love. So then the whole thing is how not to let this self-image become something inside us. That we really realize that it's like a clothes that I wear, you see? Everyone knows that this is not my clothes. This is not me, right? I hope so. Otherwise, it would be very dangerous tonight when I remove it, right? So in the same way, self-image is a cloth. It's something that you wear for a certain someone. Then you remove it when it's not needed. When people go away, and I hope you also love the moment in which they go away, not only when they are there. The thing is how to be able to be alone at all for real. Because what happens is that when they go away, they are still with us. Society is always with us, unconsciously. We're never alone. And then we begin to look at ourselves through the self-image.
There's somehow the word fake that is, somewhere in...
I'm sorry, again?
There's somewhere the word fake or fakeness in that as well, no? If you kind of have this different layers that you have to manage with every different person that you are in contact with, it doesn't feel right.
That it doesn't feel right, that it's like in a way that you fake.
That if you say every person you are in contact with, you have a different layer, basically.
Yes.
Then that cannot be real all the time.
I am right now faking being a spiritual teacher. It seems real, no? I seem convincing, at least for some time. Answering questions and all. It is not a fake. It is love. It is a service. It is It is the way we share a certain part of our being that is real in the context of this appearance, of this manifestation. You see. At that moment, it is real, as much as it is inwardly unreal. And again, unreal, that doesn't mean that it is bad. Unreal just means that you don't forget the essence of yourself, you see? And that you have trained yourself enough, trained is perhaps a strange word, but have trained yourself enough to exist without this relationship. So then, out of this complete independence, you flow. You flow, and when there is independence, you are generous, you see? You don't need to even hold something away. Sometimes I know there are spiritual people who try to renounce and then they try to show that they are not attached. And then they try to make sure they renounce. But if you really renounce, your stream of generosity can be actually wider. You are fully there, and it is real relative to that situation. Within a certain context, it is real. Is it real in the context, the broader context in which death is just around the corner and we can hear its footsteps? I don't know if you can hear its footsteps. I always hear its footsteps. It's always there, just around the corner. It's not that I don't have many plans for life and so on. I'm very active, and but it is there. And then you feel it, and that is the bigger reality, you see? That is the biggest context. The biggest context is that of a complete impermanence of form, a complete impermanence. And so in this lifetime, in this manifestation, I appear to be my mother's son, you see? But in the context of eternity, well, no. So then in this manifestation, there is love, and it is real. But in the context of eternity, even this love is just a pale reflection of eternal love that we just get to taste, like a drop that falls between us, fills us with some kind of momentary delight, but at a certain point this drop will return to the ocean of love, and that is the players will step outside the stage. And the light will be turned off. So it is when we realize that it is momentary, but because it is momentary, it is so valuable, it is so beautiful. It only makes us enter the role more happily. Because we do not attach, we are freer to play our role. And this is the amazing thing. When I truly renounce, this awakens. Suddenly, this is quite astonishing that you are suddenly able to love. Because strangely, attachment makes us less able to love. It suffocates this drop of love. Because it adds something that love doesn't like to have around it. Fear. I saw a raised hand over there.
Yes, with me.
Yes, please. Yes.
I thought you have many contracts in your life before you come into world, and I don't know if it's your philosophy as well, because then you have many shifts in your life that you just change all the people around you, maybe only your parents stay for the whole life, but friends changing or anything else.
Yes.
And my question is, if you have this, without any circumstance, if you have this shift, and I think you are only a fewer of all these things are happening, and you have to go out of this morphogenic field. If you just stay inside of this cage of anything, then you can change anything else. I think that's very difficult, and I don't think if it's make you happy, because I think we are clinched to friendship, to the love of friends. And what you say just before, you explain many things now that I questioned was half an hour before, I think, because you say so many things now it's turning around. So what I like to ask is, what have you an advice for anyone who is in a situation to clinch to people who hold you in your cage of views?
So if I'm understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, because you said many things. So
Sorry.
no, I'm joking, because you said that I said many things. So just to make sure, you were saying that we have many changing interactions in life, and then some of the interactions they also cage us, right?
Yes.
Yes, that in what way? What do you mean?
Some people just want to be right always, just have their opinions and like
Yes.
Sometimes if you are at work, yes.
Yes.
That's a good thing. If you are at work and you are have to work, then you are in a social society that you have to be not yourself. So something like this.
Yes, so there are situations and people that with whom we cannot be ourselves, and we can feel caged. And this is a delicate question, because we have two tendencies here. Sometimes we feel that we can't get out, we can't be free, and then we sometimes we even feel that we deserve it. We deserve these hard relationships, we deserve these hard workplaces, that we're not meant to feel so free, that this is life. And then we begin to cage ourselves in these relationships, in these situations, believing that there are actually very little possibilities in life. While life is such a vast expanse of possibilities, that only this thing here begins to narrow down the possibilities and say, oh, I can't, I'm obliged, this has to happen, and so on and so on. Truly, we choose to have no choice. There's almost always a certain choice. There's almost always a certain possibility. We are the imprisoners. We put ourselves in the cage, lock it from the inside, then throw it, and then say, oh my God, I'm locked forever. Wow, this is my doom, this is my fate, this is my curse. I'm meant to suffer in this relationship, and I can't because of financial reasons, because of it's always something that is connected to financial reasons, and or to some existential fear. But the truth is that there is almost always some option or options. We could change. We could flow. And this is again related to the bike question. We will always remember the bike. It's this tendency of the brain to sometimes prefer terrible conditions, as long as they are familiar, over wonderful options, because they are unfamiliar. So it rejects them automatically. It says, no, this is my relationship. These are the people. These are my friends. What can I do? The fact that there is a huge planet, and with 8 billion people, endless possible interactions. And sometimes when we boldly say, no, I want a new environment, I deserve a new environment, then suddenly and shockingly there is a new environment. Because reality, more often than not, follows our conviction. If we are completely sure that something is possible, it will not 100% happen. But it will mostly reality will arrange itself around your perception, your conviction, your energy, the way you will be fearlessly determined. Now, of course, the other side, I just want to balance it. Sometimes we tend to think that any difficulty is a sign for a wrong thing, you see, because things, they need to be smooth, they need to be perfect, they need to be conflict-free. And we enter a certain work, and that work is interesting but also demanding. And then we begin to resist the demand. Or a certain relationship, we enter a love relationship, shortly after it begins to become complicated. But why is it complicated? It's because of things that we do in our mind that make it complicated. We can't let go. As you said, some people want everything to happen exactly as they want it to happen, which is not people. It's just that the way the brain works. So don't avoid any difficulty. If with first sight of sense of difficulty, say, okay, no, I must, this is a cage. Make sure that we're not escaping. But while making sure of that, always remember, and this is true, by the way, the more you grow spiritually, your environment will change. Certain friends will be no relevant anymore. Partners, you might look at your partner and say, my God, what connected us before was fear, insecurity, attachment. If I remove all that, this is without substance. And then you will need to be brave. Because you have changed. In this, the inner and the outer are not separate. If you are uncaging yourself from the inside, be prepared for an external change. And on a spiritual journey, many things will happen to you. Dramatic changes in the emotional system, in the mental system. One cannot feel like one used to feel. You cannot expect your system to remain the same while at your core you transform. I met in Israel a fully liberated, fully enlightened woman. I met her already. She was at old age, a very beautiful woman, and she attained enlightenment, liberation in unbelievable conditions, because it was back then in times where spirituality was considered madness, and she was married with children, and their husband resented her spirituality so strongly that he didn't allow her to do anything. Didn't allow her to practice. So what she had to do was, in the mornings, she would wake up very early and then pretend that she was asleep, and then she would meditate. Like that. And all that, she even reached a point in which she nearly committed suicide. She wanted to die. And then transformation happened. She realized that she was the one consciousness that embraced in it the heaven and the earth. And then, what would you do with your husband? Because she was completely outside the cage. Consciousness broke free, was everything, everywhere. Now she chose to remain with him. And I remember when because we as students, we were young and rebellious, and so we said, why are you still with this husband? What is the point if he can't even understand you? He doesn't know what's going on with you. He allows her to come to give satsang. Really. And she says, she looked at us and she said, I love him. That was it. What can you say against that? So sometimes this takes us to a change of circumstances, a radical, sometimes some changes. Inwardly, of course, she needed to go through a huge process of being able to talk to your husband while you know that you are the all-pervading consciousness of the universe, which is quite interesting, right? No self-image, nothing. Consciousness broke free. No boundaries, no limits, no up, no down, no husband, no wife. If you are in this state, you are your husband, you see? You look at the husband and you are the husband. So sometimes the simple reality of the heart doesn't break the pattern of the external life, and sometimes completely. Be prepared for all. But in this story, because she didn't feel caged, then it couldn't be a cage, even if it was a relationship that seemed completely unsympathetic, unsupportive, and so on and so on. Very good. If, by the way, you have more questions, because I'm of time limit, I do not answer all questions, then you can just write them down and give it to us. And next time I will have them on this table. So feel free to either send them online or write them down here. I love questions. So thank you for this sharing, for this meditation in which we bravely entered ourselves and our greater possibilities.